Hey there, it's Max Doolin. This is the 6th Annual Spokane Cyber Cup, and we're going to go through some SQL injection challenges. There's 2 of them in this series, and they're under the Karen title. There's first SQLi, and we support unions. So let's get into it. Challenge 1, first SQLi. Karen is on another rampage. Can you log into her website? Hints: review the errors, try logging with some weird characters. So if you go to the website, we see we have a blog with some mean text, and if you try to click on the blog, we just get redirected back. So there's probably some sort of authentication on this, but there is a login page. If you try to type in, admin, doesn't work. It just tells us it's wrong, and we're not going to get anywhere. So this is where the concept of SQL injection comes into play. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's used in a SQL database in order to query from information. It's used all over the place to quickly gather data. However, SQL queries are just a string. So if you're not escaping your inputs correctly, you can use your input to modify the meaning of the SQL query syntactically. For this challenge, students aren't given source code. So they can't actually look at the query directly, but you actually can. We're pretty nice, and we give them, if you put in a single quote, you actually are breaking the query. So the way the query actually looks like, actually we'll just go here. Oop. The query actually looks like is this. So we have our input with the XX and our other input with the YY. Now the YY is actually going to be hash, and so we actually can't really do much with it. But what's happening here is we're putting a single quote, which is then breaking the rest of this query. So it's pretty common when you're looking for SQL injection to just see if you can trigger 500 errors or any sorts of errors at all, because that can indicate that you've done something. Most of the time you're not given really nice error messages like this, but we're nice, and so we do that. So in this case, we're given a really nice error message that tells us the query. But when we put this, you can see with the syntax, when we put the single quote in here, it's actually breaking the query. Now if we go back to the blog, it gives us this query. That's pretty helpful. If you use 2 single quotes, it works. This is because that's now a valid query. So based upon this, we know we're actually able to modify the query. Given this is a login page, all we want to do is log in correctly. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, but my favorite way is once you have a good idea what the query looks like, you can use this XXX as your input, and you just write into it. Instead of trying to write it from the side and kind of think through it, I like to put it within the query so I can make it look valid. So we're going to do a single quote, which is going to escape. So at this point, we now are actually writing part of the SQL query. And now we just want it to return true. So we can do or 1 equals 1, which is true. But at this point, the query is still not valid. And there's a couple of different ways you can fix this. One way is to create a second query that does another select. But to me, the easiest way is to just do a comment. So in SQL, a dash is a comment. So if we just do this dash, and notice the space is important. If you don't have, although the syntax highlighting doesn't work on that, if you don't have a space there, it won't work. So you want to do or 1 equals 1 space with that single quote, and we have now created a syntactically valid query that is now going to skip this password check. So now what this query is saying is if we have a string or 1 equals 1, which is of course true, then return. So now what we can do is we know this is the stuff that we added from before. So if we go back, we can copy that in there, and we log in. So what's happening here is we're tricking the SQL query to execute our modified query instead of the intended query. SQL injection is a classic web security issue. I think it's pretty fun. You don't see it as much anymore because there's a lot of safe libraries and it's very well known, but you still see it from time to time. Cool. So once again, SQL injection, we're able to put our input in here to cause havoc. If you put a single quote in here, then you can get a nice error message, which helps you understand the query. Once you know what the query is, then you can craft it yourself, and you can start trying to use this input from the known query to start to escape it, to eventually create a syntactically valid query. Hope that was fun. See you in the next one.